let's talk about this method B, right? This is the way that you should, this is the method B is the one that you should use when you're taking the actual exam or the test, okay? Okay, so, for example, by the way, let me just emphasize this one more time. This is for the what? This is for the class C. This is for the class C subnetting only. Well, I think it's not really class C subnetting only, but okay, for now, class subnetting only. Okay, and then the formula that you have to use is 256. Okay, minus and some number from the subnet mask. So this is like change. So there is some number, and then this is equal to basically the block size. The subnet block size. Okay, and the number that you are going to use is from the subnet mask. For example, the subnet mask given, right, is 192.1. Okay, sorry, the subnet mask, right? Sorry, getting tired. 255.255.255. In our case, is 192, right? And that's the number that you have to use. This 192. So it could be 192 or the 240 or sometimes 248. It really changes, depends on the problem, right? But in our case, we use the 192 is given, right? So you can use this 192, right? And then plug this 192, oops. And then you can plug this 192 to here. So 192, right? So what is our block size? So 256 minus 192, then what? That's a 64. Right? So you got 64 as an answer. So the subnet block size is 64. And then we know that from this, right? From 192, we know that what is x? We know that its x is equal to 2 and y is equal to 6 in this case, right? So from this, we know that its x is equal to 2 and y is equal to 6. The y is equal to 6. And you know that I always said when the class is subnetting case, we know that it's x plus y is always 8, right? For the class is subnetting case. But anyway, from this, right, we know that 2 to the x, right, subnets. So that means 2 to the 2, which is 4 subnets, right? And this means each block size, the subnet block size is 64, right? So what you can draw is this. Now from this, okay, so this is like IP space, first of all. I'm not really good at drawing it. Okay, so let me just try to draw really, make it pretty. Okay, so we know that there are 4 subnets, right? So for 1, 2, 3, right, and then 4, right? So we know that there are 4 subnets, and each block size is subnet block size is 64, right? So we know that this block size is 64, and then block size is 64, and then block size is 64, or the block size is 64, right? By the way, this is like a formula you can use, or actually to get the block size. You don't have to really memorize this formula. I actually, in classes subnetting, since y, right, actually tells the block size. So basically, 2 to the y is a block size. In our case, it's 2 to the 6, meaning that's 64, right? So you can use this formula, or you can use 2 to the y to compute the block size for each subnet. Okay, so this is what? This is a subnet number 1, and this is subnet number 2, and this is subnet number 3, and this is subnet number 4, right? And since we know the block size, right? Since we know the block size, we know that the network address for each subnet is more like ends on this multitude of 64, meaning multitude of 64, right? So meaning that 0, 64, and multitude of 64. The next one is, if you add 64 plus 64 is 128, right? And then when you add another 64, so this is like, when you add 64, you get 128. When you add another 64, you get what? 192, right? So we know that this network address, right, for each subnet, it ends on this boundary. I mean, not ends, sorry, start with this boundary. So you know that it's the network address, right? Network address for the first subnet is 192.168.10.0, right? Right? And then the second subnet, the network address for the second subnet is what? This guy, right? The network address, the very first one, is 192.168.10. What? 64, right? So that's basically the network address, right? And then the third one, it's this network address of the third subnet is 192.168.10. What is it? 128, right? So 128. Here's a 128. Okay, and then network address for the fourth subnet. We'll start with the 192, right? So let me just write down. So 192.168.10.192, right? Okay, so this way, right? Compare this solution, this method B, with this. But method A is very important for you to know. I mean, if you want to ace the interview questions, right? If you can draw this while you're having interview, I think definitely you can impress your future employer. I can guarantee that if you can draw this. So if they ask you to explain about subnetting, the first thing that you have to ask them is, do you have a whiteboard and then what? The pen, the marker. And then on the whiteboard, if you can draw this, you know, I'm sure that you can definitely impress your future employer. But this is for the task taking, right? So you can easily find the what? You can easily find the network address for each subnet, right? And once you find the network for the each subnet, you can easily find what? You can easily find the broadcast address, right? How? This broadcast address is what? 1 less than 64. So you know the broadcast address is 63 for the subnet number 1. And broadcast address for the subnet number 2 is 1 less than 128. So it's going to be what? 127. And the broadcast address for the third subnet is 1 less than 192. So it's going to be 191. And of course, the broadcast address for the last one is, of course, is 255. Right? So you can easily, right? You can easily, instead of drawing this, right? You can easily find the network address, and then broadcast address, network address, and broadcast address, network address, broadcast address, right? Network address and broadcast address of each subnet. Okay? So this picture, right, it's basically this. Right? So any question? Any question? Okay, so now let's go back to our class website. Now this is things that I want you to do by next time we meet. Okay? Okay, you know what? Let's just stop. So I'm done with this method B, right? So I'll just stop here. Stop.